The airport buzzed with life, filled with the hum of conversations, the rhythmic click of luggage wheels, and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting from nearby cafes. Travelers moved through the crowded terminal with a mix of anticipation and purpose. Among them was 16-year-old Layla Carter, her backpack slung over one shoulder and a sense of excitement lighting up her face. Her father, Daniel Carter, had surprised her with a first-class ticket to celebrate her outstanding achievements in school, a reward she never expected but deeply appreciated. It was her first time traveling in such luxury, and the thought of wide seats, fine dining, and attentive service made her heart race. Standing at the gate, Layla glanced at her ticket, which proudly displayed Seat 1C. She received a text from her dad. "Enjoy every moment, kiddo. You've earned this." Layla smiled, her confidence bolstered by his encouraging words. As boarding began, Layla lined up with other first-class passengers, her excitement barely contained. But as she approached her assigned seat, the thrill of the moment was shattered. A stewardess with a neatly pinned name badge reading Carla intercepted her. "Excuse me, miss," Carla said, eyeing Layla's casual attire with thinly veiled skepticism. "This section is for first-class passengers only." Layla blinked, confused but polite. "I know. This is my seat. 1C, she replied, holding up her boarding pass. Carla glanced at the ticket briefly, her lips curling into a dismissive smile. "I think there's been a mistake. First-class tickets are reserved for premium travelers. Let me help you find your correct seat." A few nearby passengers turned their heads, their expressions ranging from curiosity to amusement. Layla felt her cheeks heat up. "There's no mistake," she said firmly. "My dad bought this ticket for me." Carla raised an eyebrow, her tone dripping with doubt. "Your father? That's interesting. Let's verify this at the gate." Her words carried an air of condescension that made Layla's chest tighten. Layla hesitated, the weight of the stairs around her making her feel small. Finally, Carla relented with a curt nod. "Fine, take your seat for now. But don't get too comfortable. We'll confirm shortly." Sliding into her seat, Layla clenched her hands in her lap, the earlier excitement now replaced by a knot of frustration and embarrassment. Whispers and sidelong glances from other passengers only made things worse. A middle-aged man nearby exchanged a knowing smirk with his companion, while a kind-looking older woman across the aisle gave Layla a sympathetic smile. Layla thought about calling her father, but hesitated. Daniel had always taught her to stand her ground and believe in her worth, even when others doubted her. "You deserve every good thing you've worked for," he would often say. Those words echoed in her mind, helping her hold her head high despite the tension in the cabin. Just as Layla began to relax, Carla returned with another airline staff member, a gate agent clutching a clipboard. The stewardess's expression hadn't softened. If anything, her skepticism seemed to have deepened. The gate agent, a young woman who appeared nervous, glanced between Layla and the ticket Carla handed her. The murmurs in the cabin grew louder, and Layla braced herself for what came next. She met Carla's gaze with quiet determination. Whatever happened, she was ready to face it. "Miss," Carla began, her voice tight with authority, "we've reviewed your ticket," and, before she could finish, the cabin door swung open. Daniel Carter stepped onto the plane, dressed in a sharp suit that radiated quiet authority. His entrance was commanding, and heads instinctively turned to see who had arrived. His sharp gaze scanned the cabin, locking onto Layla. The moment their eyes met, a wave of relief washed over her, and she offered him a faint, grateful smile. Daniel strode purposefully down the aisle, his steps measured yet firm. Carla paused mid-sentence, her irritation flickering into unease. "Sir, we're just resolving a seating matter," she said, her tone taking on a forced politeness. Daniel's brows lifted slightly. "A seating matter?" he repeated, his voice calm yet powerful enough to quiet the murmurs around him. "Concerning my daughter?" Carla faltered, blinking in surprise. "Your daughter?" she echoed, her confidence faltering. Daniel stopped beside Layla, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. His gaze shifted back to Carla and the gate agent, his expression firm. "Yes, my daughter. And I'd like to know why her seat is being questioned when her boarding pass clearly states she belongs here. The gate agent mumbled something unintelligible, but Carla quickly ushered her toward the rear of the cabin, leaving an awkward silence in their wake. Passengers exchanged uncertain glances, some embarrassed, others reflective. The air felt heavy with unspoken tension as they grappled with the unfolding scene. Turning to Layla, Daniel's expression softened as he crouched slightly to meet her eye level. "Are you okay, kiddo?" he asked, his voice filled with warmth and concern. Layla nodded, though her voice wavered. "I'm fine, Dad. But why does this keep happening? Why do people just assume?" Daniel placed both hands on her shoulders, steadying her. "Because some people only see the surface," he said gently. "But today, they learned an important lesson about jumping to conclusions. And more importantly, you showed them how to handle yourself with grace." As Daniel straightened, he addressed the entire cabin, his voice carrying an even tone that demanded attention. "Let me say something to everyone here. The next time you encounter someone, don't judge them based on what you think you know. Every person deserves to be treated with respect. Whether they're my daughter, a stranger, or anyone else." A hush fell over the passengers as his words sank in. A man in a crisp business suit across the aisle cleared his throat awkwardly. "Mr. Carter," he said hesitantly, "I'd like to apologize. We all should have spoken up earlier." A woman seated nearby nodded, turning to Layla with a warm smile. "You're lucky to have a dad like him. And for what it's worth, you handled everything beautifully." As the plane climbed steadily into the sky, Layla gazed out the window, watching the sunlit clouds pass by. The sting of the earlier incident was fading, replaced by a growing sense of pride. Turning to her father, seated beside her, she spoke softly. "Thanks for standing up for me, Dad." Daniel smiled, his tone both loving and firm. "I'll always stand up for you, Layla. But what matters most is that you stood up for yourself first. That's what makes me proud. You showed them you belong." Layla nodded, her confidence solidifying with his words. "I just wish people didn't judge so quickly." Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "They'll always judge, whether they have a reason or not. It's unfair, but it's the world we live in. What matters is how you respond. Every time you stand tall, every time you demand respect, you're teaching people a lesson about decency." As another flight attendant approached, she placed a glass of sparkling water on Layla's tray, accompanied by a genuine smile. "From the crew," she said softly. "With our sincerest apologies." Layla glanced at her dad, who nodded approvingly. Taking a small sip of the water, she allowed herself to relax. This was a moment of validation she hadn't expected but deeply appreciated. Daniel leaned back in his seat, his expression thoughtful but proud. "Layla," he said quietly, "never forget this. You belong anywhere you choose to be. Don't ever let anyone make you feel otherwise."